Relationships. As you know from the introduction of this audio program, I met my husband shortly after I began practicing these feel-better principles. At this point, we've been married for 11 years, and though we have had challenges and times when neither of us thought our marriage would survive, there still has never been an unkind word between us, and that is a more powerful bond than I ever imagined. The challenge that emerged for me once we got beyond the honeymoon phase is that I am by nature a happy person, and because I consistently and consciously apply the okay concept, I am very aware that worrying is never in my best interest. My husband, though he was sometimes enthusiastic or upbeat, seemed to worry or find something to complain about on a daily basis. If you want to know how exhausting this is, try listening to someone complain without responding and notice how you feel within just a few minutes. No matter how good my day was going, I felt like a deflated balloon when my husband started complaining. At first I tried to convince him to allow everything to be okay. I explained that being grateful and appreciative was a far superior way to be, and that he would be happier and, more importantly, I would be happier if he would simply follow the directions and let everything be okay. My husband would nod his head as if he understood and was in agreement with me, but nothing changed. I went from trying to remind him of a better way to feeling annoyed or downright angry with him for not making an effort to be a happier person, or at least not tell me about his problems. I knew this was my problem. These were my negative emotions, and another person in my position wouldn't be bothered at all. If my husband had been a counseling client, I wouldn't allow him to call and complain, nor would I call him to see if he had taken my advice to heart. I knew there was an answer, and finally it fell in my lap when I read Awareness, The Perils and Opportunities of Reality by Anthony DeMello. In regard to feeling angry or upset, he says, "Now understand that you're making a demand. You have an expectation of this person. Then say to this person, I have no right to make any demands on you. In saying this, you will drop your expectation." Something about the phrase, "I have no right to make any demands on you," really got my attention, because I didn't think of myself as a demanding person. And didn't I have the right to be happy and stick up for myself? However, it was impossible to miss the point when Anthony DeMello went on to say, "If you have any resistance to saying, I have no right to make any demands on you, my, how much you're going to learn about your me. Let the dictator in you come out. Let the tyrant come out. You thought you were such a little lamb, didn't you? But I'm a tyrant and you're a tyrant. I'm a dictator, you're a dictator. I want to run your life for you. I want to tell you exactly how you're expected to be and how you're expected to behave, and you'd better behave as I have decided, or I shall punish myself with negative feelings." Suddenly it occurred to me that if I was having a bad day or feeling upset and some perky person came along telling me to snap out of it and be happy, I would tell them to get lost and maybe even stay grumpy just to prove that I'll do whatever I want to. As I read further, it said, "Oh, I'll protect myself from the consequences of your actions or your moods or whatever, but you can go ahead and be yourself. I have no right to make any demands on you." In other words, I won't allow you to manipulate me. I'll live my life. I'll go my own way. I'll keep myself free to think my own thoughts, to follow my inclinations and tastes, and I'll say no to you. If I don't want to be in your company, it won't be because of any negative feelings you cause in me, because you don't anymore. You don't have any more power over me. All at once I realized that by being angry and trying to talk my husband into seeing things my way, I was making a demand in an unsuccessful attempt to protect myself. So I followed Anthony DeMello's advice and said to my husband, "I have come to the realization that I have no right to make any demands on you. From now on, you get to totally be yourself with no interference from me." My husband's face lit up at the prospect. Then I said, "So you get to be yourself, and at the same time I will protect myself from your moods by taking over the guest room and making it into my own personal space. That means if the door is closed, I'm not available. Whatever mood you're in is now officially none of my business, and I will be in my room being happy the way I like to be. If you invite me to go hiking and you're worried or complaining, I won't go with you. I'll go with someone else." Though it took me 9 years to finally see the light, this simple choice to make no demands and at the same time protect myself made the biggest change in my inner happiness. As I felt happier and more empowered inside, my marriage and my relationships reflected this. Though I wasn't trying to change my husband or manipulate his behavior in any way, he very quickly became conscious of his own moods due to a great deal of quality alone time, as he puts it. As I began to share this powerful tool with clients in counseling sessions, every person understood the concept, but some couldn't see a way out of their personal situation. So if you're in a relationship or a working situation with someone who's very controlling and won't allow you to have your own personal space, then try to observe this situation as if it's your best friend or your child. What advice would you give them? Or try this idea from Stephen Covey. He says, "There's your way, there's my way, but there's a third and better way." If you start asking yourself to find a third and better way, you'll find it. When I first read that statement, I didn't believe there could possibly be a way that was better than mine. But I was willing to give it a try. And much to my astonishment, finding the third and better way was better, because both people win. Your solution may look unconventional to others, but the important thing is that it works for you. There are also times when we know the answer, but it's more of an inconvenient truth. For this reason, people try to convince themselves that they're confused and don't know what to do. Or maybe you find yourself concerned about others and you're trying to figure out what's right for the other person. An amazing insight on this came to me one time. A friend of mine made a very simple request, but everything inside of me was saying, "No, don't do this." Logically, it made no sense. And it was something I would have done without a thought, despite the fact that I had a long history of giving to this woman without receiving anything in return. When I stood my ground and said no, she became enraged, walked into her house, and slammed the door. Later on, I sat down with my journal and wrote, "What was that about?" And then I thought, if I knew the answer, what would it be? Here's what came to me. God speaks through your feelings. You do not know the life path of another person, and it's not for you to know. The feeling of no is the indication that that action on your part is inappropriate for the other person's growth, and you do not need to know why. If you pushed past the feeling of no and did what she wanted, why would you do that? I wrote, because I wouldn't want to feel guilty or have her angry at me. Then you become part of the problem. When I returned home, my friend, who lived in the basement apartment below me, had drafted a letter telling me what I needed to do if I wanted to continue to be her friend. We were both single moms, but I was the one who had a car, so I had been helping her out for 4 months, without any assistance from her in return. Suddenly I had the perfect opportunity to bow out gracefully. I simply ignored her demands. She stopped talking to me. In her mind, she was punishing me, but I was totally relieved. Without having to say a word, the phone calls stopped, and she no longer asked me to drive her anywhere. Miraculously, she began figuring everything out herself, which is what I had been hoping for all along. 5 years later, she called to say she had taken a workshop and learned about taking responsibility for herself. She explained that she was angry because she saw herself as a victim, and she was jealous because everything seemed to work out so easily for me. Then she told me that I was her hero because I lived everything I talked about. It's rare that I get that kind of feedback, and it's even more unusual for someone to suddenly awaken in that manner. At the time it occurred, I could see everything she was talking about, but I never said anything because I knew that it would only have value if my friend was searching for answers and saw it for herself. Every relationship and every challenge we experience has the potential to awaken us. And learning to say no to people is part of waking up. It can even be an awakening for the other person. It's not selfish to live your life in the way that feels right to you. Selfishness is expecting others to live their lives in accordance to your wishes and desires. These concepts work with children as well. Even as my daughter is growing up, I try to encourage her without making demands, and I try to stay out of the way as much as I can so she can make her own decisions. From the time she was tiny, I'd give her choices and help her to understand that whatever happened was the result of her choice. When my daughter was 13, I began trying to help her understand the idea of not making demands, including forms of emotional blackmail, and how to protect herself. Then one day I gave her some advice, and she had a rather snippy, "I don't need your advice" reply. So I said, "Sweetheart, I'm older than you are, and I may know something that might be helpful to you. But if you want to do it your way, I will absolutely support you in learning your own lessons and doing it the painful way, and I won't say another word." Her expression changed instantly as my words sunk in, and she said, "Sorry, Mom, I'm totally listening." And she meant it, because she knew I meant it. I then said, "I understand that you're a teenager and that you see your friends talk disrespectfully to their parents and get away with it. So let me make this very clear. You are always welcome to share your point of view, and I will listen. However, if you are disrespectful in any way, I won't be angry with you, but you will lose your privileges for the rest of the day. If you do it again, you'll lose your privileges for a week. I genuinely don't feel upset because I know that I will take the appropriate action. The result is that my daughter monitors her own behavior because she is motivated to do so. And this habit will serve her for the rest of her life. She has a sense of freedom. And if she loses her privileges, she knows it's the result of her own choices, not because of someone else's expectations or demands. One thing we all know from being children or having children is that no matter what children have been taught, there will come a time when they are going to do whatever they are going to do. By not demanding a certain behavior or making your child right or wrong, you actually put yourself in a position where your child will listen to you because once they know you won't judge them, they will come to you for advice. I had a client once who complained about her husband lying to her. I asked her a simple question. Is it safe for your husband to tell you the truth? This goes for your kids too. If you want the truth, it has to be safe for them to tell you the truth. This way of being requires trust, and it's important to practice being lovingly detached, even if a loved one's decision causes them pain. I still distinctly remember being 18 and telling my mother I wanted the freedom to make my own mistakes. I was willing to endure painful consequences just for the right to make my own choices. Though you may understand the concept of not making demands and protecting yourself, you may still feel that you have a situation that is the exception to the rule, a situation where you have to do something you don't want to do and you're stuck. So let me share a little game called I Have To. Here's how it works. Get out a piece of paper and write down what it is you have to do. Next, write down what will happen if you do not do it. Keep writing until you can't think of anything else. Then connect the outcome to your first statement. Here's an example. I have to work at a job I hate. If I don't go to work, I'll get fired. If I get fired, I can't pay my rent. If I can't pay my rent, I'll be homeless. If I'm homeless, I'll end up living under a bridge with a shopping cart, and then I'll die. Now go back to the beginning. I have to work at a job I hate, or I'll end up living under a bridge and then I'll die. When you put it together this way, it seems like a totally unfounded fear, and once you see it that way, your fear will begin to disappear. Have you ever seen someone drive themselves into the ground because they believe no one else can do what they're doing? Finally, they end up in the hospital, and what happens? Everything works out, despite the fact that they believed nothing would work out without them. So if you feel stuck, do the I have to exercise. And when you're done, write, if I knew the answer, what would it be? Start making something up. Let your creative mind take over. Ask yourself this question at bedtime and let your subconscious mind work on the problem for you. My very best ideas always come right as I'm waking up. If you think there's no solution to your problem, think about this. Before you can have a problem, the solution already exists. So when you ask the question, what is 2 plus 2, the answer 4 already exists. There is always a third and better way. You just have to get out of the way and find it.